Hello folks, welcome to Netcruzer RC. Alright, we're going to do an unboxing today, an overview of a brand of RC that I've never owned before. It's going to be my first one. A Kyosho. The Kyosho Outlaw Rampage Pro, ready to run. Now, Type 2, they've got a weird kind of name system going on with this. This is technically the third revision of this truck that's come to market. I believe last year they came out with the Outlaw Rampage in a white and a blue version. And then they came out with the Pro kit. And now this is the Rampage Pro Ready to Run Type 2. So they've added a couple of the Pro features as well as changed some of the color schemes and some other upgrades along the way. So let me just show you a little bit more about this. You can get this red with the circular headlights, or you can get the gold with the square headlights. This is a fairly interesting chassis design where it's independent front suspension, solid rear axle. And the rear axle can have different type of trailing arms. Out of the box it comes with the straight trailing arm, but you can adjust it so that it's on an angle. 2RSA. I believe that the 2RSA means two-wheel drive rear solid axle. I don't have very many two-wheel drive bashers on my channel. Is this the only one? This might be the only two-wheel drive basher that I have. Comes with this ready to run radio control system, 15-turn brushed motor, large capacity shocks. They're plastic threaded bodies, 32 pitch gears. The tires are actually nice. They're not officially licensed tread pattern, but the tread pattern looks pretty good. And since Kyosho is a Japanese RC manufacturer, on the other side of the box is all the same information in Japanese. So let's get this out of the box and take a look at it. So I expressed interest in this Kyosho after seeing that Frank the Tank had built the Pro kit, and I was quite curious to see how's the Ready to Run Pro compare, because there are some differences that we will talk about. So yeah, we now have a local authorized Kyosho dealer, which is 110 Hobbies in Pembroke, Ontario. So yeah, here it is in gold, and I think this is going to be one of those love it or hate it style color schemes. I chose to go with the gold because I liked how the gold looked with all the black accents. Compared to the Pro kit, this thing pretty much has a full 100% chrome delete. So there's no chrome on it at all. Even though it has some of the Pro features, for example, the Pro kit has a chrome front bumper and metal front skid, a metal rear skid. Here's the underside of the chassis. It's kind of an interesting design where it's motor on axle, MOA. So this is and the transmission's on axle too. So it's not direct drive, but it's got a motor and transmission on a solid axle with independent front suspension. In that respect, it's kind of like a small UDR where you've got a lot of suspension travel. And so that's the cool thing about this truck, is that it looks somewhat scale. So the differences between this and the Pro kit that you build is this one comes fully ready to run with all the electronics. You get no chrome and no metal. And you also get one spare tire on the rear cage instead of two. Now the one big change related to handling, it does not have the sway bars. The Pro kit has a sway bar system that this does not have. I'm quite curious to get out here and run this truck directly compared to Frank the Tank's Pro kit and see how much of a difference does that make of not having a sway bar on the rear at all. So I'm going to run this box stock on 2S to start, and then I'll decide, is it worth getting that sway bar kit? There are two potential immediate upgrades that I would want to get for this truck if I don't like how it handles out of the box. One of them being that sway bar kit. The other one isn't really a handling issue. It's a skid that's missing on this Ready to Run. So on the Pro kit, these four mount points come with a metal skid, a full metal skid that goes over the motor and the rear transmission assembly. It's a really nice piece, and that you don't get that at all with this Pro RTR. Same as the front bumper is all plastic. Everything's all plastic on this. You do get full hex hardware and everything, and the actual truck is the exact same truck, but the difference is that you're not getting any of the metal pieces. So let me grab the camera and I'll get you some more closer in shots to look at this truck. One thing to note is that this black stripe is not paint. This is a decal for everyone else. I recently learned that Canadians are the only people that pronounce it decal. So yeah, that's interesting. I will likely want to get a LED light kit. So you can see here that it has a spot to include the LED. It almost looks like it's smoked lenses, but it's not because it's all black. Because this has a full chrome delete, as I call it, it just means they didn't chrome the pieces. They're black instead. But it also darkens the whole look. So it's got a pretty menacing presence, I would say. I really dig it. I think this is a very nice looking RC. It's somewhat of a stylized Ford looking body. None of this is officially licensed at all. So it is definitely a body that looks like a late 80s, early 90s Ford to me. But it's got the Chevy headlights. If you get it with that grille, it looks even more like an old Ford. But I don't believe you get both of them in the kit. But I'm going to go through all the extra stuff in a minute and we'll take a look at what else you get. Clear windows, excellent for an RTR, just adds that extra bit of realism, even though that you can look down in there sometimes and see electronics. But I think having clear windows just aids in that extra scale look immensely for when you're driving it around. The body is kind of an interesting design where, because it's so thin and a it doesn't have a full ring around it, so some of it is pretty loose. It looks like it's screwed or clipped into place in a few pieces, in a few areas. It does not look like it's going to be easy to get the body off, and you really should never have to take the body off unless you're going to have to do some maintenance. You get 5 tires with this, and the rubber compound is quite hard, but I think that will be good for allowing it to slide around instead of traction roll. That's one of the concerns that I have with this, is that it's that solid axle rear. They tend to dig and then flip over a lot, so we'll see if that happens when we're driving it. There'll be no driving footage in this video. This is just the unboxing and overview, and then we'll get out there and show you real running in another video. The battery tray is a toolless design with just this little clip here where you can just slide it into position. Move that aside, and then you can open this door, and then you can slide your 2S stick pack LiPo inside. The battery connector is a T-plug or a Dean's connector, and it's actually molded into the chassis so that gives you a little bit of an extra easy one-handed plug connector. Motor is a 15-turn black can, just a typical non-repairable, non-serviceable, non-repairable, you know, brushed, ready-to-run motor. And it is a bushing, not a bearing. Just looking over how you would get this body off, and I believe it's these 4 clips. I'm going to take those 4 off first and then see what else has to come off to get this body up and off. So you undo those 4 clips, and then this rear cage is hooked under. So you just unhook it from there and unhook it from here, and then this whole thing should be able to lift up and off. Yep, what else am I missing? Probably the same thing back here. Yes, and so you just pull it off. Yeah, you just pull on it and they come off. It's not something that you can really easily do one-handed, or that you should be trying to do one-handed, but that's how you do it, and I'll show you with the body off in a second. Alright, here we go. Body off. Whoa, still a little connected. Silver painted on the inside. I will probably add some Gorilla Tape clear, especially around this rear bed area, because this is really thin, as well as the wheels sit inside, so you will have the tires and stuff scrape through the paint if you don't add some protection. So I find that Gorilla Tape clear is the lightest weight type protection that you can add to a body. That, yeah, because that's thin. I would imagine this body would get ripped up pretty quickly without any protection. Got most of the body all Gorilla Taped. I really like this stuff for protecting your RC bodies, especially for RCs that have inboard wheels. So protected all the wheel wells. I go overboard. I do the hood. I did the sides. Especially I did this whole rear box section because that is going to be the weakest link in this body, as well as this, where it's got a little crease right through here in there as well. So the body is now heavier, but I tried to keep it off of the roof, off the high point. Now the body is protected anywhere where it's going to have abrasive points, so that's good to go. The front suspension is significantly stiffer than the rear, which is what you want, but the rear feels really soft though, especially with this rear cage weight. It might be too soft. We will see. The front feels pretty much perfect. The rear feels really soft, but I think that's going to give you that type of look that you want for scale running. Electronics wise, you get the Orion waterproof 2S nickel metal hydride 6 or 7 cell ESC, and if you want to switch it between nipple mode or normal mode, that's how you do it with the jumpers. And the receiver box is massive. I'm not sure that I'm going to open that to take a look, but that is a gigantic receiver box, and they've got the 2RSA stamp in there as well. This whole cage system is length adjustable, so for some reason if you decide that you don't want this tire sticking this far out, you can bring it in and shift the weight forward or back. I wanted to show you the difference in this sliding cage assembly, and there's one problem that I've realized with it. When it's in a stock location, you've got the full articulation of the suspension, but if you bring it in all the way, it hits the rear axle. In order for it to clear it, you have to have it backed out almost all the way. It's the only way that it'll clear. Even now, you still have to have it back all this way to be able to get the full suspension travel. If you bring it up where you think it would look best, it hits. The shocks are all plastic design with fairly soft springs, but I do like that it is a vented shock cap, which is pretty rare in ready to run, to be able to see it to have a nice vented shock cap, so that over time your shock does become a bit of an air pump, and then air gets inside of it, and being able to loosen the bleeder screw, compress the shock with the bleeder screw out, let the air out, put the screw back in. That's a quick and easy way to service your shock without having to replace all the oil and bleed them the long way. Here's the front suspension assembly. It's got double A-arms and somewhat of a scale looking type arm from the bottom especially. It looks pretty scale. You've got metal hinge pin bracing. Since it is rear wheel drive only, it's just a freewheeling type bearing. Bearings are not great. Looks like that's a little bit out of balance. I might make some adjustments there, but I would imagine that the wheel nut is a little bit too tight, because it should have more spin than that on ball bearings. Now these tires are bead locks, so there's no glue. It's just a nice little RC option where that if you want to change your tires, you don't have to worry about gluing them, and you can save these wheels if you like these black wheels. Let's get the radio and other bits out, and I'll show you more about that. Now this box has the radio system in it. So we're going to see all the extra stuff that comes with the Rampage. Why is it locked focus on this? Alright, just getting the radio control system and all the extra accessories out of the box, so we'll get that stuff out. We'll show you what else you get. We got a bind plug, additional body mounts. I'm not sure why. Oh, so you get 2 additional trailing arms, you get additional body mounts, and you get tools and more body clips. So as well as you get shock pistons. There's quite a bit of stuff in here, things that you will want to keep. An antenna whip. Why would they give me an extra antenna whip? I don't know why there's some of these extra parts in here. It's probably because they use the same pack with the 70% kit, and they're just giving you the extra parts in the same bag. You also get 2 long screws, additional wheel hexes, and some other mount points, some other mounts. I'll have to look in the book to find out what that stuff is for. And then here is the RTR Kyosho radio, and it'll do all of the things that you need to do to be able to adjust your endpoints, your trims, all that adjustments. Mostly I'm just curious about the feel of it, because I think the feel is fairly unique and the design is fairly unique for ready to run radio. It actually feels fairly premium. There's no batteries in this yet. It feels good. The rubber grip is actually textured. You have a 3rd channel switch here on the handle. You've got steering switches, you've got rates, you've got endpoints. It's a neat little design. A foam wheel, and the wheel is on an angle, so that the angle of your hand is a little bit, and normally you would be like this, where it adds a little bit of wrist fatigue when it's straight up and down, so they've angled it. It goes to more of the natural position of your wrist when you're holding onto the radio. So it's a minor thing, but it's appreciated. I like that. Power switch is on the back. I do believe that it takes 4 AA batteries, not included. You want to provide your own LiPo battery with this. Ideally a 2S LiPo I think is what you're going to want to run, and I do believe it comes in LiPo mode out of the box. It does not. it comes in nickel metal hydride mode out of the box. So be aware of that. I'm only going to ever run this in LiPo. So I'm going to move this jumper now. Comes in nickel metal hydride mode, and we want to run it in LiPo mode. So I'm going to move this jumper over one. So now I have reverse on and LiPo mode on. Here is the manual you get with it. It looks like it's the full kit instruction manual. How to set your trims, how to check your steering. It's got all of the RTR stuff that you want to know, as well as I do believe it gives you the full, yeah, so the first 20 pages or so are all about the ready to run setup, and then they give you the how to build it. So everything's in here about how to maintain or build this RC or fix it. That's great. I want you to check out the steering in this thing. It's on a slider. Plastic slider style system. The servo saver is on the horn, but that's how the steering works, is on that sliding system. You can see here the clearance that they have for this upper horn. Non-adjustable turnbuckle links, but I'm okay with that. It keeps your toe at factory spec all the time, so I have no problem with that. Looks like we got a little bit of flex there. Acceptable amount of caster slop. And then toe is just me moving the whole assembly. It actually feels pretty tight. For ready to run, that's pretty tight. Show you more of this rear axle with the transmission assembly. It's fairly unique that we've got a transmission on a rear solid axle with the two upper metal links, and then the rear ones are these trailing arms. There is a downside to this vehicle, which I think is the noise that it makes. Really loud squealing noise out of that transmission. And I'm not sure if it's the gears that were used or the type of grease that's used, but I am going to see if I'm able to get this to quiet down. Even though I have never heard this one yet, we're going to see when I run it if it's noisy. And behind the right rear tire is the cap for the slipper adjustment. So you probably do like twist this off. Yeah. Unscrews, and then there's your screw for the slipper adjustment. So that's how you get into that. Before running any ready to run RC, if it has a slipper assembly, I always suggest tightening it yourself. So because the factory is just whatever mood the worker was in that day, human inconsistencies. So I used a 7mm wrench to take off the wheel nut. And here's a bit of a closer look at the bead locks on the rear. Plastic 12mm wheel hex. And then here's the slipper adjustment. So I'm just going to check how tight it is. I'm holding on to the hex with this hand while tightening down the slipper with this hand. It seemed fairly loose, so I'm tightening it way down. Well, it was very loose. Okay, I've tightened up the slipper. I've got a battery in. I've got it powered up for the first time. I was just setting my steering. One thing you do want to note is that your steering dual rate was at max, and you don't want to have that because that's going to put extra stress on your servo as it's trying to overdrive. If I dial it in where you got lots of right steering, then you don't have enough to the left. So you actually have to dial it up past that point so you get as much left as you need before it starts screaming. And then you're overdriving it to the right. So that's a limitation of the ready to run radio. So I'm just going to hold it up and adjust my throttle. Just kind of burning in the brushes on this new motor. I'm just going to let this motor burn in a little bit. One thing I am noticing is that it's got a bit of vibration. The wheels are definitely out of balance. So you can try and adjust the balance of your wheels and tires too by just fiddling around with the way that they're mounted and some weights, but it's not bad. And then here's full throttle. Full throttle 2S. No balloon at all. Here's a little example of the rear diff action. I've just got this barely turning, but I'm going to be able to hold on to this. And then you can see it's open diff. I think that's where most of the noise comes from, is from that rear diff. A little noisy, you probably want to put some grease in the diffs. Because I added a bit more weight to the body with the tape, I did have to preload collar. I did have to add more preload to the rear suspensions just to get it to sit a little bit level now. So it has a 7,000 milliamp hour battery in the front, has nothing in the rear, and now it's got somewhat of a level stance. The rear is still a lot softer than the front. Pretty nice looking RC, guys. Pretty nice looking RC. Scale details on this are quite good. Alrighty guys, so that's my first Kyosho. I've got everything ready to go. We're going to get out there for a run next. If you enjoyed this video, hit that like button. If you're new around here, subscribe. If you want to talk to me, leave a comment down below. And as always, thanks for watching.